Tonight arrested, then run over and killed by the police.
2 die on icy road. Why wasn't it gritted?
The baby boy who lost his parents £200.
And after 11 years, we finally make it to Pluck's gutter.
Good evening. Grieving relatives are demanding to know how a man who'd escaped from a police car was run down and killed by the same vehicle. 32-year-old Wayne Bowen died under the wheels of the car that was taking him to Sittingbourne police station. He'd kicked a window out and got onto the roof of the speeding car. Hugh Kirby reports.
More than 12 hours after the tragedy, police investigators were still at the scene on the main road to Sheerness. Nearby, flowers from the brother of 32-year-old Wayne Bowen, who died after escaping from this police car. Its driver, a woman police constable, and her partner, a constable just out of training school, had been called at closing time last night to a disturbance at this pub in Sheerness High Street. Wayne Bowen, a married man with 2 young children, was arrested and driven off towards Sittingbourne police station. A police spokesman said initially Mr. Bowen had remained calm, but during the journey he became violent, kicked in one of the police car's windows and managed apparently to escape onto its roof. The driver braked, the body fell forward and was run over by the car.
What's going on? You've got 2 police officers and a bloke in the back. He's kicked the window out, but they've got to stop, haven't they?
It actually, if you think about it, it takes a minute to travel a mile at 60 miles an hour. But if that man was on the top of that car for 1 minute, it only takes 5 seconds to brake. So as far as I'm concerned, there's 55 seconds with a man travelling on the top of a police car.
My understanding is that the car wasn't driven for that distance with the man on the roof. He'd broken his way out of the car through the window and had climbed onto the roof. And as a result of that, this terrible and tragic incident occurred.
An independent inquiry is to be held. The 2 police officers are in a state of shock and have been given time off. But a spokesman said they did not act improperly and there's no question of them being suspended. Mr. Bowen's family formally identified his body this afternoon. Hugh Kirby, Coast to Coast, Sheerness.
2 people were killed when their car spun out of control on black ice. It was one of a series of accidents on roads across the region. Meridian reports.
This car went out of control as it was driven along the A249. It skidded across the central reservation and crashed into a transporter before spinning back across the carriageway. The Mercedes driver and his passenger died instantly. Luckily, only 1 other car was involved in the accident. It was clipped by the Mercedes and spun round.
I think that once the roads have been gritted, people expect that the ice will have gone, the sun is nice and shiny, but it just doesn't guarantee that the ice will disappear. And of course, people should drive according to the conditions of the road. And a good guide is to see just how frosty the grass is by the side of the road.
At the same time, on the same stretch of road, another car had skidded on ice. It was a completely unrelated accident. A few miles along, on the opposite carriageway, more evidence of the hazardous icy conditions.
The weather conditions, I think, this time of the year with the clear skies and the frosty mornings really do say to us that there will be more accidents to come.
The A249 was closed for several hours. Kent County Council say the road was gritted at 9 o'clock last night and there was no reason to believe it needed treating again. The gritting lorries were back in action after the accidents. With the cold, icy weather likely to continue, police say drivers must take extra care. Mary Garn, Coast to Coast, Maidstone.
The future of a life-saving cancer unit for children is threatened because of a row between a charity and a hospital. The Kent Cancer and Leukemia Fund has withdrawn a gift of £50,000. It claims the money will be used on bricks and mortar and not on providing cancer treatment for the children themselves. Jonathan Mendenhall reports.
It was July last year when doctors first approached fundraiser Peggy Wood for money towards a children's cancer clinic at All Saints Hospital in Chatham. It was planned to be the first of its kind in Kent, offering young cancer sufferers from the Medway towns specialist care on site instead of facing them with uncomfortable journeys to London. 18 months on, work hasn't started. The £50,000 offered by the Kent Cancer and Leukemia Fund has now been withdrawn.
I thought It was going to be for a small clinic for children with malignant diseases. I did realise there would be some refurbishment, and I didn't mind some of my money being spent on that, but I didn't realise that the whole of the 50,000 would be put into a completely different project.
Medway's leading paediatrician, Dr. Peter Manuel, blames hospital management for the crisis.
I think much of the blame has to go on management, partly because they have not really kept Mrs. Wood informed of what's been happening, and partly because it has taken 18 months to get the planning to the state that it is. At the moment, the planning is pretty well complete, and we are now in a position pretty well to go on to complete the project within the next 3 or 4 months.
But managers strongly refute any criticism. They say refurbishing All Saints and building the Children's Cancer Unit at the same time is a combined project. The charity's money will only be spent on the children.
Well, I would very much regret if a misunderstanding has occurred. As you know, I will be meeting with Mrs. Wood early in the new year, and I hope I'll be able to offer her the reassurances she requires.
While the arguments continued, the cost of the project has risen from £100,000 to £240,000. Jonathan Mendenhall, Coast to Coast, Chatham.
Kent Police have released the figures for people stopped for drink driving over the Christmas period. In total, 3,034 people were tested. Just over 4%, 132 people, were found to have excess alcohol in their blood. 74 people have been charged and face court action. The figures show that there's been a slight fall in drink driving compared to the same period last year, when 5.5% of drivers tested were positive. Essex Police have now identified a man killed in a road accident overnight. He was Graham Bassett from Hardy Road at Stanford-le-Hope. Mr. Bassett, who was 35, was walking along Manor Road at Corringham. He was hit by a VW Golf. Detectives investigating the death of a man found with gunshot wounds at Westcliff in Essex say there are no suspicious circumstances. Stanley Lawrence, a jeweller, was found dead in the garden of his home in Chadwick Road.
A convicted killer who escaped from an Essex mental hospital has been recaptured in Southend. 34-year-old Tony Strong was committed to Runwell Hospital at Wickford for the manslaughter of his 70-year-old landlord. Strong, a schizophrenic, had been on the run for 2 days. He disappeared after being allowed into the hospital grounds. An Indian restaurant owner has been fined more than £1,000 after a live mouse fell on a customer's head. Moana Mia has closed the Palace of India restaurant in Farningham until the mouse infestation is cleared. Dartford magistrates ordered him to pay £1,100 in fines and costs. Plans to shut Haywards Heath Hospital in Sussex are to go to public consultation. At a meeting today, the Mid Downs Health Authority voted to bring forward closure plans. A few weeks ago, the Cottage Hospital was shut temporarily to save money, and patients were transferred to the new Princess Royal. Closing the hospital altogether could save about £500,000.
Dover MP David Shaw has been at the centre of protest demonstrations 600 miles from his own constituency. He's come under fire for what he calls an investigation into corruption in the district council in Monklands, the constituency of the Labour leader John Smith. The Labour Party say he has plenty of problems to sort out in Dover without poking his nose into anyone else's business. Lloyd Bracey reports.
Mr Shaw did not, in fact, confront Labour councillors. After private meetings with the people he claims have complained to him about their council, he encountered some less sympathetic local residents. Some witnesses spoke of a shouting match. Monklands District Council has become a pet subject for the Dover MP. He's made allegations in Parliament about what he says is corruption in the backyard of the Labour leader John Smith. Before he set out on his 600-mile journey north, he explained his mission.
It goes to the heart of the Labour Party's role in Great Britain and the United Kingdom. It really does put into question whether the Labour Party is fit to govern, whether it's fit to govern at a local level, a county level, or at a national level.
But that mission has annoyed the man who stood against him in the last election.
There's an organised sleaze campaign going on, a smear campaign organised by the Conservative Party. If there's anything at all untoward in Monklands Council, that'll be looked at in the proper way. The auditor will look at it, the authorities will look at it, and it'll be exposed. It's not his job. What's allowed him to self-appoint himself to go to Glasgow, for goodness sake? It's a nonsense.
No one else we spoke to in Mr Shaw's constituency knew that he'd gone to Scotland. Many wondered why.
it doesn't seem to have much to do with us down here.
Well, there's plenty of corruption down here, I should think, to sort out before going anywhere else.
Surely there's someone up there, you know, good enough to do it. I don't know, can't see the reason.
You look at the state of Deal and Dover, the unemployment's around here, it's terrible, isn't it?
Back in Scotland, the allegations are being investigated and Mr. Shaw is claiming credit for that. But he'll be just as pleased that his visit caused political outrage. Some people believe that was always the plan. Lloyd Bracey, Coast to Coast.
These days, fewer and fewer of us are dying. The death rate has plummeted, which is good news, unless you're an undertaker. The funeral business, it seems, is facing hard times, as David Forsdyke reports.
We're not dying at anything like the rate we used to. It's heartening news if you're watching, but it's given rise to a major problem for the funeral industry. Quite simply, the death rate's down by nearly 10%, and so the numbers of funerals have dropped. Among the reasons, the victims of the Second War should have been in the figures as natural deaths. And now the funeral business itself is showing a shortfall.
The death rates decrease now because those who met their deaths prematurely in the war would have been reaching maturity now. And of course they're not.
We take more care of ourselves these days, so we take longer to arrive here. John Weir's own funeral service is among the last of the successful family firms. Once they were all run like this, but major conglomerates, including the French, have bought scores of British companies because the rate is about to rise again.
The French have taken a major share of the UK funeral market.
Why have they suddenly decided to move in?
Well, I suppose it's business. The UK death rate is down by some 9%. Having said that, come 1995, some analysts believe that there will be an upturn.
A regular funeral is upwards of £600. The sheer expense of running funeral directors can be gauged by this hearse. The cost to buy is now £53,000, and that's without the usual accompanying limousine. If the cost of materials wasn't enough to put people off dying, then the future of the entire funeral business might. They still insist that their customers are getting value for money.
There'll come a time when each and every one of us will become a customer in a place like this, but it really does depend on how many are left to cater for us. David Forsdyke, Coast to Coast in Meridian.
Well, now to the other end of the life cycle. Remember the couple last week who stood to win £200 if their baby was born on Christmas Day? Well, the bad news is they lost their bet, but the good news is they don't mind a bit. Sandy Fleming reports.
Finally, the Nielsen family have their latest addition. Their greatest expectations for Christmas Day didn't materialise, so their chances of winning £200 were dashed. And instead, Jordan Joseph decided to make his appearance at Orsett Hospital yesterday.
He was actually born 13 days late. He was 4 days over the bet date, so we missed it by quite a bit. He was well and truly late and he just didn't want to come, I don't think.
Ricky and Lee, who had definite ideas about the baby, are thrilled with their new brother.
I don't mind if I have a brother, but I wanted a sister.
So what do you think of your little brother?
Well, he was cute.
What do you think of the new baby?
I think it's a boy.
Are you pleased that it's a boy?
Yeah.
What would you have thought of it being a little girl?
I don't know.
The Nielsens put their £10 bet on as a joke because both Ricky and Lee arrived late. They had planned to spend their winnings on the children, so now they've decided Jordan's got some making up to do out of his first pocket money. Sandy Fleming, Coast to Coast, Grays.
You wouldn't believe the two cooing either side of me. Now, for the last time, I think, I link to Andy Stegel and the sport.
Thanks a lot, Liz. The England cricket squad have certainly been the focus of attention in the last week, but while some 30 players will represent their country either in India or with the A Tour in Australia, what's left for those that stay behind? The dole queue makes no allowances, but in Sussex, two brothers who've stuck together on the pitch are doing the same off it. Mike Field reports.
Alan and Colin Wells are the latest link in an extraordinary cricket tradition in Sussex. They are the 26th pair of brothers to play for the county in the last 100 years. 32-year-old Colin made his debut in 1979 and 31-year-old Alan 2 years later, and they've been permanent fixtures in the Sussex side ever since. And down the ages, the Sussex team always seems to have contained a set of brothers.
There seems to be a tradition at Sussex.
goodness knows why. We've had Languages, Parks, Oaks, all sorts of brothers.
I'm sure we must hold the world record for cricketing brothers.
Is there any reason for that? I mean, is it just a coincidence?
You better ask their doctors.
Even in the winter months, the Wells partnership stays intact. They run a packaging business in their hometown of New Haven, and it's very much a family affair.
During the summer when Colin and myself are away, Dad comes in to run the place. During the winter, around sort of September, October, Colin and myself come in and Dad sort of hibernates for the winter.
Do you find that frustrating that you're not out playing cricket in sunny climes in the winter?
I've done that in the past. I've sort of played in South Africa sort of for 3 winters, so I've had a taste of that. I did enjoy it, but there comes a time when you feel you need to sort of settle down and try and find something a little more secure, and hopefully when Colin and myself retire from the game, the company will still be here.
And how are you doing in these recessionary times?
Surviving, which I think is quite good. A lot of companies going bust at the moment, obviously, so all the time we're keeping our head above water. We're quite pleased.
Even Mum plays her part in the business. The brothers have complementary roles. Colin concentrates on marketing and Alan in administration. But they have to wear many hats, and in true cricket style, they're good all-rounders. Although great rivals over the years, Colin, who celebrates his benefit with Sussex next season, says the relationship has mellowed.
We actually get probably more nervous for each other than we do ourselves.
What about when your brother's the captain? Do you have to do what he tells you?
Of course. But at the end of the day, I'm still his elder brother.
Alan, a dashing batsman on the verge of an England place, was made captain of Sussex last season, and he's enjoying the new challenge.
I like to think that I can sort of divorce myself from captaincy when I'm batting. When I'm at the crease, I like to think that, you know, I'm Alan Wales the batsman, not Alan Wales the captain. I'd like to feel that, you know, at Sussex we're going to go from strength to strength, and I'd like to be obviously part of that all the time. But at the same time, you'd still obviously ambitious to play for your country, and maybe one day I will.
And while Alan and Colin Wells do battle for Sussex in 1993, supporters are starting to ask where the 27th set of brothers coming from. Mike Field, Coast to Coast, Hove.
Well, Colin is certainly made of stern stuff because he starts his benefit year on New Year's Day. He's playing a cricket match, would you believe, at Hands Cross near Crawley. Start 11 o'clock. And he's not the only one. Half an hour later, Richard Ellison is doing the very same thing to begin his benefit season in Kent. His celebrity game is at Hartley Country Club near Brands Hatch. Ironically, though, Frosters stop play at Folkestone Races tomorrow. The ground is too hard there. With tomorrow's end-of-year special, of course, that's it from the last Coast to Coast Sports Bulletin. But on a personal note, I'd just like to thank you for making my 9 years here very enjoyable. Thank you, Mike.
A brand new television station will hit your screens at midnight tomorrow night. TVS comes off the air to be replaced by Meridian. But what will the changeover mean for viewers? Mary Garn has been finding out.
This is the new look that will become a familiar sight on your TV. Meridian is taking over the television franchise for the south and southeast of England. It's a result of the ITV auction in which franchises were sold to the highest bidder, providing they passed the quality threshold. TVS was told it had bid too high.
We've lost. Meridian's got it.
Meridian had pledged to pay the government more than £36 million a year for the franchise. It will make news and regional programmes, but all other programmes will be bought in from independent producers.
If we have a thriving economy, money will be coming in, and programmes such as Meridian News, I think they call Meridian Tonight, will be safe. But if the money runs out, then the first thing that's going to go will be local programmes.
Local news is here to stay. We are determined that we will provide a well-resourced service across the region. We've a tough act to follow with TVS. We've invested heavily in the service, and we're committed to it 100%.
In place of Coast to Coast, you'll see Meridian Tonight. There'll be many familiar faces, including Mike Debbins and Ron Lobeck, and a new presenter, Alison Holloway. Liz Wickham's been appointed health correspondent for the whole Meridian region. Although Meridian has a new image, it's anxious to keep the loyal audience TVS has built up over the years. Mary Garn, Coast to Coast, Maidstone.
Well, there aren't many places in the southeast that haven't been visited by the Coast to Coast cameras at some point. So with just one day to go, we thought we'd try to fill in some of the gaps. We found 3 villages which over the past 11 years have never been mentioned on the programme. Are they really so quiet and remote that nothing happens? Well, we sent Richard Brock along at last to put them on the map and the television.
Over the years in Coast to Coast, we've asked why in Wye, we've filmed warblers in Warbleton, and we've reported on sandwiches in Sandwich. Well, today we're in Pluck's Gutter. It's frightening to think what might happen here, but we'll find out.
The fact is, what can happen in a village with just one house and a pub? The pub overlooks the River Stour and attracts fishermen. Hardly big news. The pub has a welly ban. Again, not so hot. But once inside the Dog and Duck, you'll discover Pluck's Gutter does have a claim to fame.
A few years ago, they closed all the roads through here and closed the bridge because they found First World War gun cotton under the bridge. And it was great fun because we were kids and we were sitting upstairs watching it on the television. And there was a Southern news flash and, the road's been closed, the B2046, and all the area's been evacuated, except we were sitting there watching it on the telly, and it was a bit scary.
So news does happen here. When was that?
That would be back in the 1970s.
And today's news, well, the locals had a clay pigeon shoot, and Graham had a really bad day.
Well, the tractor wouldn't start for a start. I had a hell of a job to start that. Once we got out there, I didn't do too well at all.
So we leave Graham and Pluck's Gutter for somewhere else we've never heard of, Hassel Street. Possibly one of the reasons we've never been here before is because we couldn't find our way in, nor out.
Go down to the end of the lane and turn right.
It's almost worth staying in Hassel Street. It's a good place for an argument.
Well, we used to have feuding, two people feuding, two local farmers, and that used to be quite adventurous. They used to actually sometimes meet head-on in the lane, and neither would give way. So that was quite fun.
Our third destination should have been easy to find, Folly Town. After all, who can miss a folly, or for that matter, a town?
Excuse me, sir. Oh, is this Folly Town?
That's right.
I'm looking for a folly. I haven't seen one.
No, I'm the only folly around here.
There's no folly?
No.
Where's the town?
This is it.
What, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 odd houses?
That's right, yes.
Small town.
Well, it may lack a couple of vital ingredients, but it's got lots of sheep, and now they've been on telly.
Final proof, if proof were needed, that Coast to Coast reaches the parts other programmes don't. Richard Brock, Coast to Coast, Pluck's Gutter, Hassel Street, and Folly Town.
Places we almost didn't make it to. Now, weather time, Ron Lobeck.
Thanks very much, Mike. Good evening, everyone. Well, I had a phone call from Barham, which is near Canterbury. Did a programme about the battleship a few years back. And temperature there, Jane Newman reported that the temperature fell to -10 Celsius. That's in a valley. They certainly fell to -5, -7 generally across the region. A very cold night. Another cold night in prospect. Again, the warnings of frost, icy patches and fog. Looking at the satellite sequence, not a lot happening. There's still the blocking high-pressure system maintaining this very dry air. Have you noticed the large number of electric shocks are getting off various things? It's because the air is so very dry. It may also interfere with television signals, of course, because of the high-pressure system. The map looks like this, the high persisting. By noon tomorrow, it'll still be hanging around just to the east of us. The forecast shows that by noon, it will be just to the east of us. Yes, there it is, just to the east of us, as I said. On to tonight, another very cold night. Temperatures generally down to -6, and certainly it could go a couple of degrees below that in central parts of the region. Again, widespread frost and icy patches, and also the possibility of some fog patches drifting in on the light, very light southeasterly winds. Tomorrow, temperatures struggling initially, but along the coast with the wind tending to become more southwesterly and a bit more cloud around, particularly across Sussex from an old weak front that's trying to come towards us, it'll be a little bit warmer. The picture tonight, it comes from Gavin Jakes, and he goes to Edgerton School. With that, it's back to Liz.
Thank you, Ron. And finally, well, Coast to Coast wouldn't be Coast to Coast, would it, without the funny animal story? And tonight it's a very funny animal. It's a dog which we were assured loves to lick Mike Devons. Nick Knowles reports.
There he is, the great man himself, Mike Devons, on TV at the usual time. And we've come here to Rainham today to meet Jamie, the dog who every time Mike is on TV, leaps up and gives the screen a kiss. So, Jamie, off you go, do your stuff, and give him a big kiss. Go on, give him a big wet kiss now, Jamie. Anytime you're ready, Jamie. Well, seems to be no reaction there, but we at Coast to Coast are used to dealing with animals that don't do what people say they'll do. We have a few tricks up our sleeve. For instance, cheese spread. Put a big blob on Mike's nose, and the dog will come up and lick anything. Go on, give him a kiss. Give him a kiss. OK, so the cheese spread hasn't worked, but we don't give up that easily. It's beef next. Go on, give him a kiss. Give him a kiss. So looks like we'll have to bring out the Maltesers. That'll get him. Go on, Jamie. Come on, give him a kiss. Give him a kiss, like this. Come on, come on. Are you sure that this dog actually kisses Mike Devons?
Yes, he does. He's been doing it for about 3-4 months now. He comes on the screen, he will walk up and give him a great big slobbering kiss.
Go on. Please, just once, please. And that's how you get Mike Devons licked by a dog. Nick Knowles, Coast to Coast, in Raynham.
And that's about it for tonight. The second last Coast to Coast ever. And to let you in on the secret, we've actually been broadcasting for the past few nights from the corner of a different studio.
Yes, this is where they normally make the Saturday morning children's programme What's Up Doc for Scottish television. And it's also we can bring you the biggest ever Coast to Coast tomorrow night, when for the first time ever we'll have a large studio audience.
So we do hope that you can join us then. And meanwhile, well,
that's all, folks.
Countryways returns on Monday with a visual celebration of Goodwood in September, where people and horses live in harmony with the land and local crafts and traditions thrive. The Countryways of Goodwood, Monday at 6:30 on Meridian.
On TVS, Marilyn and Adam in a Tiz, The Countryways of Summer Bay, next.